Okay, Eric, in December we've got a new release of Cluster Server coming out. What's new in it, and can you explain it to me?
Sure, Bob. We've got a few things going on in this release of Cluster Server due out in December 2014. And the first of which is this new majority fencing feature. And I feel compelled to put up a big caution sign around this because the use case for majority fencing is somewhat limited. We don't want everybody using majority fencing just because it's easy to implement. Majority fencing is for those situations where there are no external resources, such as coordinator disks or coordination point servers, to arbitrate fencing. The way majority fencing will work in those limited use cases is that if you were to lose cluster communications between a couple of the nodes, majority fencing will ensure that the subcluster with a larger number of nodes is the one that survives while the other one will panic and shut down. In the event that all surviving subclusters have an equal number of nodes, then there's a mechanism in place to make sure that only one subcluster will survive. Moving on, you all know about Smart I/O, which was originally delivered in the 6.1 release and extended in the 6.2 release. In this release of VCS, we introduce a Smart I/O agent, and this will allow you to fail over a Smart I/O cache object along with the application that's failing over. The Smart I/O cache object will be recreated with the same characteristics that it had prior to failover. We also introduced in this release adaptive HA for LDOMs. If you're familiar with adaptive HA, this is where VCS makes failover decisions in advance based on the actual load and remaining capacity of a server. And what we do in this release, VCS runs inside the control domain, and we're able to accurately measure the load being placed on a physical system by the LDOMs that are being controlled by VCS. So we can make very good, accurate failover predictions in advance, or forecasts. Intelligent Monitoring Framework was introduced for VCS a couple of releases back, and in this release we extend the IMF capability to application HA. We also introduced support for SAP HANA on virtual machines protected with application HA, and this allows you to configure SAP HANA with virtual business services. So if you have an SAP HANA instance that depends on external databases or other applications that are running in other clusters elsewhere, you can configure that as part of a virtual business service and get all the protection that provides. In this release, we also introduce within the installer the online upgrade. And what this means is there's zero downtime for the application while you're upgrading the VCS components. So this basically is automating a process that used to be done manually by a lot of people, where VCS is dropped and all the VCS components stopped and then upgraded underneath the running application and then brought back up. It's important to note that you do lose high availability protection while this upgrade is in the works. Finally, we introduced, about the same time as this release, support for Cisco UCS. And this allows you to fail over a UCS system profile in the event that you have a hardware failure in your UCS environment. Before the introduction of this agent, there was no real way to automate failover of a UCS system profile. You'd have to do some complex scripting and some complex manual activity in order to effect that failover.
All right, so Eric, this is a great overview of what's new in the new release, and we really appreciate you taking the time to explain it all to us. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob.